My name is Brooke Griffin. I'm 45 years old. I live and work in Frisco, Texas, a quiet place where no one knows my past, and that's exactly how I want it. 3 years ago, I disappeared. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain myself. I packed what mattered, held my daughter's hand, took my grandfather with me, and left everything else behind like a house on fire. But even now, I remember everything, every word, every look, every second of the night that destroyed my family forever. This story happened during Christmas 2022, back when I still believed blood meant safety. That afternoon, around 4 o'clock p.m., I was driving through Chicago traffic with my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, strapped into the back seat. She was humming to herself, swinging her legs, blissfully unaware of the storm waiting for us. I, on the other hand, felt like my chest was slowly tightening. I couldn't explain it, just a heavy, suffocating sense that something was wrong. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. It's Christmas, I whispered under my breath. Nothing bad will happen today. I was wrong. I'm a single mother. My ex-husband left when Lily was 5. He said he wasn't ready to be a parent, that marriage was a mistake made too young. He walked away clean. No custody battle, no assets, just freedom. Since then, I've been everything to Lily. Mother, father, protector. And that's why I was terrified walking back into my childhood home. At 5 o'clock p.m., I pulled into my father's driveway. The house looked the same, big, imposing, cold. The moment I stepped inside, my stomach dropped. My older brother, Andrew, was already there. 3 years older than me, always louder, always favored. He sat in the living room with his wife, Vanessa, a woman with sharp eyes and a smile that never reached them, and their 2 sons. None of them greeted us. Vanessa turned her face away. The boys stared openly, hostile and unashamed. I forced a smile anyway, because that's what I'd been trained to do my whole life. During awkward small talk, I learned the truth. Andrew's restaurant had collapsed, the one he begged me to save. 6 months earlier, he'd called me late at night, voice shaking, asking for $300,000. My entire savings, Lily's future, our safety net. I said no, and now they were living in my father's house. I should have left right then, but I stayed, because family was supposed to mean something. At 6 p.m., the only person who ever truly saw me arrived. Grandpa Richard, 82 years old, sharp mind, gentle eyes. He refused my offer to pick him up, took a taxi instead. I don't want to be a burden, he'd said. Those words broke my heart. The party began warmly enough. Laughter, glasses clinking, fake smiles. For about an hour, I almost believed we could pretend. Then the alcohol hit, and everything unraveled. At 7:30 p.m., Uncle Robert casually asked Andrew about his restaurant. The room went silent. Andrew exploded. His anger filled the house like poison gas. And as he stood up, swaying toward me, placing his hand on my shoulder, I felt Lily's fingers tighten around my arm. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about money. This was about punishment. And it was just beginning. Andrew's hand stayed on my shoulder like it belonged there. Not a brotherly touch, not even a drunk one. It was a grip, light, casual, and cruel in the way it reminded me that he felt entitled to my space, the way he always had. Lily pressed closer to my side. I felt her little body trembling through her winter coat, and something inside me hardened. I told myself, don't react, not here, not in front of her. But Andrew didn't come to talk. He came to perform. He cleared his throat, then lifted his glass like he was about to make a toast. Does everyone know, he announced loudly, how proud I am of my little sister? The room turned toward us. Forks paused midair. Conversations died. The Christmas lights suddenly felt too bright, like spotlight bulbs in an interrogation room. My father didn't stop him. Vanessa didn't stop him. No one did. Andrew smiled, thin, bitter, and continued. Brooke Griffin, he said, dragging out my full name like it tasted bad. The woman who has money, but no heart. My pulse jumped. My hands went cold. I tried to keep my voice even. Andrew, not now. It's Christmas. We can talk later. He ignored me. He turned to the relatives like a prosecutor addressing a jury. 6 months ago I called her, he said, begging, not for a handout. A loan, just a loan to keep my restaurant alive. He shook his head with fake sadness. And what did my dear sister do? He looked down at me, eyes glittering with something ugly. She said no. She sat on her pile of money and watched her own brother drown. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Robert's jaw tightened. Someone's chair scraped the floor. But Andrew wasn't done. Oh, and let's not forget, he added, voice rising. She didn't just abandon me. She abandoned my boys too. She would rather watch her nephews starve than lend me $300,000. My mouth opened, but for a second no sound came out. Because the truth was, it wasn't a simple lie. He had asked, I had refused. But what Andrew never admitted, what he never told the room, was that $300,000 wasn't spare cash. It was Lily's future, my emergency fund. The money that meant if I lost my job, Lily wouldn't lose her home. If Grandpa needed care, I could pay for it. If life hit us hard, we'd survive. I swallowed, tasting metal. Andrew, I said carefully, that was my savings. You were asking me to gamble my daughter's life on a business already failing. That should have been reasonable. That should have ended it. Instead, Andrew leaned in closer, voice turning sharp. You hear that? He barked to the room. Always her, me. That's Brooke. Then he tilted his head, lips curling. You scared, Brooke? Scared everyone will finally see what you really are? I felt Lily's hand slide into mine, small, warm, trusting. My heart split in two. Part of me wanted to drag her out the door immediately. The other part, older, exhausted, and full of years of swallowing unfairness, was suddenly tired of running. I forced a breath. Andrew, sit down, he laughed. And that laugh, it wasn't funny. It wasn't even drunk. It was the laugh of someone who'd been waiting for a moment like this. Then a tiny voice cut through the tension like a bell. My mom isn't selfish. Everyone froze. Lily had stood up. Her hands were clenched at her sides, her chin trembling, but her eyes were locked on Andrew like she was trying to be braver than her fear. My mom takes care of me, she said, voice shaking but steady. You can't say bad things about her. For one single second, I felt pride bloom so fiercely it almost hurt. My little girl. Standing up to a grown man. Standing up for me. Then my father's voice snapped across the room like a whip. Lily, he shouted, do not interrupt adult conversations. The word adult hit me wrong. As if Lily's feelings were less real because she was small. As if cruelty didn't count unless it happened between grown-ups. Lily turned, looking up at my father. She didn't look scared. Not of him. Not yet. Grandpa, she said, her voice cracking with disbelief. Uncle Andrew is lying. My mom isn't selfish. The room was so quiet I could hear the heater clicking. Andrew's eyes flicked to Lily, and the look he gave her made my stomach drop. It was hatred. Pure, irrational hatred, like she wasn't a child at all. Like she was an enemy. Then Andrew burst out laughing. Not a chuckle. A loud, harsh laugh that bounced off the walls. His wife, Vanessa, didn't even flinch. She just stared at her plate, lips pressed together, as if she'd seen this 100 times and decided it wasn't her problem. Andrew leaned forward toward Lily, voice dripping venom. When you grow up, he said slowly, you'll be just like your mother. Lily's face tightened. Andrew kept going. That's why your dad left her, he added, eyes gleaming. Because she's selfish and cold. No wonder he ran. The air disappeared from my lungs. I saw red. I stood so fast my chair tipped backward. Don't you? I started, but the words died when Lily's voice rose again. Don't talk about my dad. Lily's fist clenched tighter, tears pooling in her eyes. You don't get to talk about my mom either, she said. You're the mean one. You're the selfish one. That did it. Andrew's face twisted like something snapped inside him. He stepped forward. I moved faster. I grabbed a fistful of his collar and yanked him down to my level. The fabric bunched under my fingers. His breath smelled like wine. Shut your mouth, I said through my teeth. You will not speak to my child like that. For a heartbeat, Andrew looked shocked. Not because I was threatening him, because I was finally touching back. Finally refusing to be the quiet sister who swallowed everything. Then his eyes slid past me to Lily, and his expression turned ugly again. He didn't yell at me. He yelled at her. You and your mom need to get out of here, he screamed, voice cracking with rage, and never come back. Lily went pale. Her lower lip trembled. Her eyes widened like she'd been slapped. I felt her fear like it was electricity in my veins. I tightened my grip on Andrew's collar. Apologize. Right now. Andrew's mouth opened again, and my hand moved before my brain could stop it. My fist struck his face. Not over and over. Not some wild, chaotic beating. One blow, sharp, immediate, a reflex fueled by fear and fury. Andrew stumbled backward, hitting a chair. The chair scraped loudly. Someone screamed. Vanessa finally sprang up, shouting Andrew's name, her voice shrill and panicked. People rushed in from all directions. Hands grabbed my arms, pulling me away. Brooke, stop! Uncle Robert yelled. Jordan's voice cut through the chaos. Brooke! Brooke! Back up! Back up! Lily was crying now. Not the quiet sniffles of a child trying to be brave. This was full-body sobbing, the kind that comes from shock, the kind that makes you feel like you're too small for the world. My breathing was heavy. My hands shook. Andrew pushed himself up, face twisted with rage. You hit me, he hissed. Then, louder, to the room. She hit me! I'm calling 911! I wiped a strand of hair from my face, voice cold. Go ahead, I said. Call them. And call Child Protective Services too while you're at it. Tell them how you screamed at a 7-year-old and tried to kick her out of a Christmas dinner." Andrew hesitated. For the first time that night, he hesitated. His eyes flicked to Lily, curled into herself, crying into my coat. Then to the relatives staring at him like they finally saw him clearly. Then to Vanessa, whose fingers dug into his arm, silently begging him to stop making it worse. I thought foolishly that was the end of it, that we'd leave, that the party would dissolve into awkward apologies and quiet cleanup. But I didn't understand something yet. What happened between me and Andrew was only the opening act. Because the real betrayal wasn't going to come from my brother. It was going to come from the man I had spent my whole life trying to earn love from, my father. The room was still shaking from the impact of what I'd done. Not the punch itself, one sharp moment of instinct and fear, but the fact that I dared to break the family's oldest rule. Brooke endures. Andrew attacks. Everyone excuses it. Lily clung to my coat like she was trying to disappear into me. Her sobs were small now, stuttering, exhausted, like her body didn't know whether it was safe to keep crying. I kept one arm around her, the other still half raised, still charged with adrenaline, as if danger might come again from any direction. Andrew stood up straighter. His face was flushed with alcohol and humiliation. He didn't look hurt. He looked offended, like I'd embarrassed him in front of his audience. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes burning into mine. "I'm calling 911, he repeated, more confidently now, as if he'd found the role that would make him the victim. Vanessa hovered at his side, making small, distressed sounds, just enough to look like she cared, not enough to actually confront what he'd said to a child. The relatives were frozen, caught between shock and discomfort. And my father was silent. He hadn't checked on Lily. He hadn't asked if she was okay. He hadn't scolded Andrew for screaming at a 7-year-old like she was garbage. He just watched. Then he stepped forward. For a split second, my heart lifted. That old part of me, stupid, hopeful, trained, whispered, maybe he'll finally do the right thing. Maybe he'll finally say, "Enough, Andrew." Maybe he'll finally act like a grandfather. But he didn't come toward Lily. He came toward Andrew. He placed himself between us like a shield. And in that moment, the air in my lungs turned to ice. "Brooke!" he roared. His face was red with anger, not from concern for Lily, not from shame at Andrew's cruelty, anger at me. "How dare you hit your brother in my house?" The words hit me like a slap. I blinked. I actually blinked like I hadn't heard right. "Dad," my voice came out thin. "Did you hear what he said to Lily?" My father's jaw tightened. His eyes didn't even flick toward her. "He's drunk," he snapped, dismissing it like it was a minor inconvenience. "And she shouldn't be butting into adult talk." Lily made a small broken sound behind me. I felt it in my ribs. "She's 7, I said, voice shaking now. "He screamed at her. He told her to get out and never come back." My father waved his hand. A gesture so casual, so practiced, it made my stomach churn. "Then you teach her to stay quiet," he said coldly. "She's your child, not mine." Not mine. 2 words. And suddenly my entire childhood made sense. Every time Andrew took something from me. Every time he insulted me. Every time he messed up and I was expected to forgive. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a decision my father had made long ago. Andrew was his son. I was a problem he tolerated. And tonight, Lily had stepped into that same role. My voice dropped lower. "So you're really doing this? You're defending him." My father's nostrils flared. "I'm defending what's right." I almost laughed. It came out more like a breath. "What's right?" I echoed. "Dad, Andrew begged me for $300,000. That's my life savings." "Exactly," my father barked. "You have it. You could have helped, but you didn't." I stared at him, trying to find the father I used to believe existed. I couldn't. "Why is it always me?" I asked. "Why am I always the one expected to sacrifice?" My father's eyes sharpened. "Because Andrew has a family." My heart lurched. "And I don't?" I asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. My father's gaze flicked to Lily for the first time, but it wasn't warm. It wasn't loving. It was impatient. "Don't twist my words," he snapped. "Andrew has responsibilities. He has boys. He had a business. You're alone because you always put yourself first." The lie was so neat, so comfortable. As if my divorce had been a moral failure instead of abandonment. As if raising Lily alone hadn't been a daily act of survival. As if I hadn't done everything to make sure my child felt loved. I felt my throat burning. "Dad," I said, voice strained. "I said no because I had to protect Lily. Because if I gave him that money and his restaurant still failed, we'd have nothing." My father scoffed. A sound full of disgust. "You always think about yourself," he said. "You always did." Something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet snap, like a thread pulled too tight for too many years. I stared at him, and the words poured out before I could stop them. You've never treated me fairly, I said. It's always Andrew, Andrew's needs, Andrew's mistakes, Andrew's feelings, and I'm just expected to swallow it. My father went still for a few seconds, long enough for hope to rise again, just a fraction. Then he inhaled deeply, as if preparing to speak with authority. The whole room seemed to lean toward him. Even Andrew quieted, watching his father like a king, waiting for judgment. And my father finally said the words that would haunt me for the rest of my life. He looked me dead in the eyes and declared, I agree with Andrew. My stomach dropped. Then he continued, voice firm, merciless. You and Lily should get out of here and never come back. Lily gasped behind me. My father didn't stop. We've already voted. Voted. Like my child was a nuisance to remove. Like I was an outsider in my own family. The room erupted. Uncle Robert stood so fast his chair nearly toppled. Are you out of your mind? He shouted. Kicking out your daughter and your granddaughter on Christmas? Jordan shook his head, eyes wide. This is insane. Other relatives murmured, disgusted, stunned. My father lifted his chin, calm now, like he'd been waiting to say this. This is my house, he said. I decide who stays. And if anyone disagrees, you're all welcome to leave too. One by one, people stood, not because they were afraid, because they were ashamed to be part of this. They moved toward the door, pausing to hug Grandpa Richard, who had been sitting quietly the entire time. He hadn't said a word. He hadn't defended me. He had just watched, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. And as the guests reached the doorway, I turned back to him. I didn't know what I was looking for. Approval? Comfort? Permission to finally stop trying? Grandpa Richard met my gaze. Slowly he nodded. Then he spoke in that deep, steady voice that always sounded like truth. Take action, Brooke, he said. Show them who really needs to leave here. The room froze again. Even Andrew's laughter died in his throat. My father frowned, confused. Dad, what are you talking about? Grandpa Richard didn't answer him. He only looked at me. And suddenly I understood. Grandpa wasn't asking me to fight with fists. He was asking me to stand up with something stronger. With truth. With power. I took a slow breath. I stepped forward, past Lily's trembling body, past the stunned relatives, and I faced my father and brother. My voice came out calm, too calm, like steel dipped in ice. 30 days, I said. My father blinked. What? You have 30 days to get out of this house, I repeated. For a second there was silence. Then my father burst into laughter. Andrew joined him immediately, as if their laughter was a weapon they'd practiced together. They laughed loud, mocking, confident, as if I were a delusional woman playing pretend. My father wiped tears from his eyes. This is my house, he said, still laughing. I've lived here for decades. Who do you think you are? I didn't flinch. I smiled, small, controlled, and full of something they hadn't seen from me before. I'm someone who knows the truth, I said. Then I let the next words fall like a guillotine. This house belongs to Grandpa. My father's laughter stopped instantly. It died on his lips like he'd swallowed something poisonous. His face drained of color. He looked at me, then at Grandpa Richard, then back at me again. No, he said, voice suddenly thin. Even if it's Dad's, it'll be mine when he's gone. I'm his only son. This time I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was finally clear. He wasn't a father. He was a man counting inheritance like it was love. I pulled out my phone. Check the family group chat, I said softly. The big one. The one with 30 relatives. The room held its breath. I sent the photos. Documents. Ownership papers. Legal transfer from 2017. My name. Not a rumor. Not a threat. A fact. Gasps rippled across the room as phones lit up. My father's hands shook as he scrolled. Then he snapped his head up, eyes wild. These are fake, he screamed. You forged them. Andrew lunged forward, pointing at me. Call the police. She used Photoshop. She's lying. And that's when Grandpa Richard finally stood. Slowly, steadily, like a judge rising to deliver a verdict. Enough, he said. One word. And the entire room fell silent. Grandpa's eyes swept over my father and brother with a disappointment so heavy it felt like punishment. Then he spoke, and with every sentence, the ground shifted beneath my father's feet. I did transfer the house, Grandpa said. Legally, in 2017, with lawyers, with witnesses, everything notarized. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Grandpa continued, voice cutting clean through the air. I watched you favor Andrew for years, he said. I watched Brooke get pushed aside. I watched you excuse cruelty as if it were nothing. So I made sure justice existed somewhere in this family. Then Grandpa looked at me, and his voice softened, just a little. I told Brooke to make it public back then. She begged me to keep it secret. She wanted harmony. My chest tightened, because it was true. I hadn't wanted the house. I'd wanted my father to love me the way he loved Andrew, and I'd been willing to sacrifice anything to earn it. Grandpa's gaze turned sharp again. And today, he said, you showed her exactly why she needed protection. My father shook his head violently. You're unfair. You love her more. Grandpa's expression didn't change. This isn't favoritism, he said. This is balance. Then he dropped the final truth like a bomb. You sold the old family house, Grandpa said, and gave the money to Andrew to open that restaurant. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. My breath caught, because I hadn't known. I hadn't known that after my mother died, when my father claimed there was crushing medical debt, when he said selling the family house was the only way, he'd been lying. He hadn't been drowning. He'd been investing in Andrew and pretending it was tragedy instead of choice. I felt dizzy, not from grief, from realization. My whole life had been shaped by lies told in my father's calm voice. I stared at him. He couldn't meet my eyes. My voice came out quiet now, dangerous in its steadiness. 30 days, I said again. Then, colder, my lawyer will send the notice. If you refuse, I will sue. And that's when my father's fist came toward me, a sudden, sharp motion fueled by panic and rage. The world tilted. Lily screamed. Someone shouted my name. And then, a violent hit from behind. A flash of pain. Andrew's voice roaring like an animal. You think you can kick me out? Lily's crying shattered the room. Mom, Mommy! And everything went dark. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was pain. Not sharp, not sudden. A deep, throbbing ache that pulsed through my skull like a slow drumbeat, reminding me that something had gone terribly wrong. The second thing I felt was fear. Not my own. Someone was gripping my hand too tightly, small fingers wrapped around mine like they were afraid I'd vanish again. Mommy! Lily's voice. Thin, shaky, exhausted. My eyes fluttered open. White ceiling. Harsh fluorescent lights. The steady beep of a monitor somewhere to my right. A hospital. I tried to move, but my head screamed in protest. Lily gasped when she saw my eyes open. She's awake, she cried, half laughing, half sobbing. Mommy's awake! Her face was blotchy and red, eyes swollen from crying too much, too long. I squeezed her hand back, grounding myself in the warmth of her skin. I'm here, I whispered, though my throat felt like sandpaper. I'm here. A few moments later, a young doctor stepped in. He checked the machines, shone a small light into my eyes, asked me my name, the date, where I was. I answered slowly, carefully. Then he explained. Andrew had attacked me from behind. A wine bottle. It shattered on impact. Glass embedded in my scalp. 10 stitches. A concussion, but no brain damage. Very lucky, the doctor said gently. Another inch, another angle. It could have been much worse. I didn't respond, because all I could think was, if it had been worse, Lily would have been alone. That thought made my chest tighten so painfully I had to look away. After the doctor left, Grandpa Richard came in with Uncle Robert and Jordan. Their faces were pale with worry and relief. Grandpa sat beside the bed, his old hand resting over mine. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have spoken sooner. I shook my head weakly. No, I whispered. You protected me. You protected Lily. He closed his eyes briefly, like the weight of the night had finally settled into his bones. They told me what happened after I lost consciousness. The guests rushed in. Andrew was restrained. Vanessa screamed. Aunt Linda called 911. The ambulance came. So did the police. My father and Andrew were taken into custody for assault. I listened without reacting. Something inside me had gone very still. Not numb. Resolved. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. On the second afternoon, something unexpected happened. The door opened quietly. Vanessa walked in. Behind her were Andrew's 2 sons. They didn't look at me. Their heads were down, shoulders hunched, like they were carrying a weight too heavy for children their age. Vanessa stepped closer, hands clasped tightly together. Brooke, she said softly, too softly, I know what happened was wrong. I said nothing. She swallowed and continued. The prosecutor is going to press charges. Andrew is looking at serious time, prison. Her voice cracked. I'm begging you, she said. Please, help us. I finally looked at her. Help how? She took a shaky breath. Change your statement, she said quickly. Tell the police you provoked him, that he was defending himself. I'll pay you. $50,000, plus all your medical bills. I stared at her. She rushed on, desperation spilling out. I don't want my kids growing up with a father in prison. I don't want them teased. Please, have mercy. Mercy. The word tasted bitter. I leaned my head back against the pillow, closing my eyes for a long moment. Then I opened them and looked straight at her. Where was your mercy? I asked quietly. when your husband screamed at my 7-year-old and told her to leave. Vanessa froze. I remember, I continued. You stood there. You didn't stop him. You didn't say a word. Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I shook my head, exhausted. Take your children and leave, I said. I won't change my statement. That's when the boys stepped forward. The older one, his eyes were cold, too cold. You're evil, he said flatly. When my dad gets out, I'll get revenge. The younger one's voice shook, but the hatred was there. Remember this day, he yelled. We won't forget. My stomach twisted. These were children, and already they were learning cruelty. I pressed the call button for the nurse. When she arrived, I asked calmly that they be removed. As they left, Vanessa turned back, her face twisted with rage. You'll regret this, she hissed. The door shut behind them. The room felt heavier, but clearer. 2 months later, the trial began. It moved faster than anyone expected. The evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses, medical records, photos, police reports. The verdict was read aloud in a quiet courtroom. Andrew, 3 years in prison for aggravated assault with a dangerous weapon. My father, 1 year for assault and being an accomplice. Compensation awarded. As Andrew was led away, he turned and looked at me. No remorse, only hatred. When I get out, he whispered, you'll know what hell is. I met his gaze without flinching. I'll be waiting, I replied calmly. Hopefully, you'll be a better man by then. I didn't believe it, but I needed him to know I wasn't afraid anymore. A week after the trial, I made my decision. I was leaving. Not running. Leaving. For Lily. For Grandpa. For peace. Grandpa didn't argue. He came with us. We moved quietly. Changed numbers. Deleted social media. Cut off the past like a dead limb. 3 years have passed. Lily is 10 now. She laughs easily again. Grandpa sits in the backyard, sipping coffee, watching her play, saying these are the happiest days of his life. As for my father and Andrew, they're out of prison now, still looking for us, still claiming they've changed, still asking for forgiveness. But I remember the courtroom. I remember the bottle. I remember Lily's scream. And I know some doors should stay closed forever. 3 years. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Other times, it feels like yesterday. In Frisco, our life is quiet, intentionally so. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from loneliness, but from safety. From knowing no one is going to raise their voice at my child. From knowing no one is going to tell her she doesn't belong. Lily is 10 now. She's taller, louder, braver in ways that don't scare me anymore. She laughs without checking the room first. She sleeps through the night. Sometimes I watch her playing in the backyard, her hair catching the sunlight, and I wonder how much she remembers about that Christmas. I hope the memories fade. I hope what stays with her isn't fear, but the knowledge that her mother didn't stay silent. Grandpa Richard is 85 this year. His steps are slower, his joints ache on cold mornings, but his mind is as sharp as ever. He sits outside with his coffee, watching Lily ride her bike, and he smiles in a way I never saw when we were still in Chicago. These are the best years of my life, he told me once, being around people who actually love me. I believe him, and every time he says it, I'm reminded that leaving wasn't just an escape. It was a correction. Through Uncle Robert, I hear bits and pieces of the past. My father and Andrew are out of prison. They've been asking about us, telling anyone who will listen that they've changed, that they regret everything, that they just want to make things right. But regret spoken out loud doesn't erase threats whispered in courtrooms. It doesn't undo fists or bottles or a child screaming for her mother. Forgiveness isn't owed just because someone shares your blood. And reconciliation doesn't mean safety. People still judge me. Some say everything that happened was my fault. They say if I'd just lent Andrew the $300,000, none of it would have happened. That a restaurant wouldn't have failed. That prison doors wouldn't have closed. That my nephews wouldn't be growing up without their father. Maybe. But here's what I know. If I had handed over that money, I would have taught Lily that her future was negotiable. That her safety could be traded for someone else's comfort. That love means sacrifice, even when it destroys you. And that is not a lesson I will ever pass on. So here's what I've learned. First, boundaries matter, even with family. Especially with family. Love without limits becomes permission for abuse. Second, money reveals truth. When someone only values you for what you can give, that isn't love, it's entitlement. And finally, leaving isn't weakness. I used to think staying and enduring made me strong. Now I know better. Strength is choosing peace. Strength is protecting your child. Strength is walking away from people who hurt you, even when the world tells you to stay. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Was I wrong for refusing to give my brother the money? Was I wrong for walking away instead of trying to fix people who never wanted to change? I'd genuinely like to know what you think. Please share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you in any way, consider subscribing to support stories like mine. Thank you for staying with me until the end.